Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kachanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy with mitzvot and commands us to engage in words of Torah. That's okay. This week's parsha is Shlach Lecha. Shlach Lecha. Send you forth. Send forth. It begins, Vaydaber Adonai al Moshe Lemor. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Shlach Lecha Anashim ve'aturu et Eretz Canaan asher ani noten livnei Israel. Send men to scout the land of Canaan. Send men to scout the land of Canaan. Shlach Lecha. Send for yourself. Send forth. Moses sends 12 spies to scout out the land of Israel, to come back and report what the state of that land is, to say how fertile it is, how fortified it is, what's going on there. And we read, they reached the Wadi Eshkol. Eshkol literally means cluster. And there they cut down a branch with a single eshkol, a single cluster of grapes. It had to be borne on a carrying frame by two of them, and some pomegranates and figs. That place was named the Wadi Eshkol cluster because of the eshkol, the cluster that the Israelites cut down there. And at the end of 40 days, they returned from scouting the land, and they went straight to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community. And as some of you know, 10 of them gave a very disheartening, discouraging report, a report that discouraged everybody. It says, the country we traveled and scouted is one that devours its settlers. It's very fertile, but it's filled with giants. It's filled with giants. All the people that we saw in it are men of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim. And then it says something extremely interesting. It says, Vanehi be'einenu kachagavim v'chein chayinu be'eineihem. And we saw these giants, but we looked like grasshoppers in our own eyes. And so we looked in their eyes as well. So we looked to them as well. We looked like grasshoppers in their eyes. Actually, it says we looked like grasshoppers in our eyes. We looked like grasshoppers in our eyes. That's a strange thing for them to be saying. We look like grasshoppers to ourselves. And so therefore, did we look like grasshoppers to them? But we see here, one of the lessons here is about self-image. How we view ourselves will be mirrored in how others view us. So this little teaching here touches on how we view ourselves. Two of the spies brought back a more encouraging report. One was Caleb, and the other was Joshua, Yehoshua ben Nun. And that becomes significant because Joshua takes over after Moses. And Joshua, that's the same Joshua is in the book of Joshua, the one who leads the people eventually into the land. And he sends 2 spies later on. He sends spies as well, much later, the next generation. And that actually is the Haftorah. That story, I remember having an experience with that story many years ago when I was studying for a year in Israel. And I was in this program, and one of the teachers was a teacher of history and also a field guide. He was a rabbi, historian, and field guide on the land. And he would take us out to different parts of the land to see it firsthand. And at one point in the year, we went to the city of Jericho. The city of Jericho, which, as far as I know, is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, way below sea level, near the Dead Sea. And we didn't go directly into the center of modern Jericho. We went to the outskirts. We went to the excavation. We went to ancient Jericho. And while we were there, he read to us from this account, which is the Haftorah, Joshua chapter 2. It says, Joshua, the son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies, saying, go spy out the region of Jericho. And they go to the house of Rahab, a woman named Rahab, and they lodged there. And the king of Jericho was told, some men have come here tonight, Israelites, to spy out the country. The king of Jericho thereupon sent orders to Rahab, produce the men who came to you and entered your house, for they have come to spy out the whole country. The woman, however, had taken the 2 men and hidden them. It is true, she said, the men did come to me, but I did not know where they were from. And at dark, when the gate was about to be closed, the men left, and I don't know where they went. Quick, go after them, for you can overtake them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under some stalks of flax, which she had lying on the roof. So the men of Jericho pursued them in the direction of the Jordan, down to the fords, and no sooner had the pursuers gone out than the gate was shut behind them. The spies had not yet gone to sleep when she came up onto the roof, and she said, I know that the Lord has given the country to you, because dread of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Sea of Reeds for you when you left Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og and the 2 Amorite kings across the Jordan. When we heard about it, we lost heart, and no one had any more spirit left because of you. And she makes a deal with these spies that she will keep them until it's safe. And when they do come into the land, when the Israelites do come into the land, they will not harm her or her family. But then, after a number of days, she sent them on their way, and they left. She tells them, go to the hills, go to the hills. And they went straight to the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers turned back. And so the pursuers, searching all along the road, did not find them. So this is what the field guide, rabbi, historian, read to us while we were there at the excavation of the old city of Jericho. It says they went straight to the hills and stayed there 3 days. And then this rabbi who was reading to us said, look over there, look over there. There are the hills, there are the mountains. So now we're going to go there. Now we're going to walk there. That's what he liked to do. He liked to have just go in the footsteps of. So we set out to walk to those hills that did not actually look so close, but we started walking towards those hills. So we got to foot of those hills, and he said, now we're going to climb the hills. So we started climbing the hills, and he would say it's just around the corner, and we'd go around the corner, and there was another peak we had to go up, and he'd say it's just around the corner, and we go around the corner, and there was another peak we had to go up. And this went on for a while, always climbing higher, always just around the corner, and always another corner to go around. Finally we got up to the top, and we looked down on this valley, the valley of Jericho, to our right, and to the left, the desert and mountains of Moab. And to the left, also along within the valley of Moab, was this green strip of land that was the Jordan River, but everything else was brown. Everything else was brown, except in the middle of the valley of Jericho, there was Jericho, emerald green. Emerald green. It was just this bright green in the midst of the brown. And I suddenly realized, of course, Jericho is an oasis. That's why it's so fertile. It's an oasis. And the thing about soil, and the soil of that desert too, you just add water and it springs to life. There's life in the soil. Just add water. Just add water and there's life. That's why water is a symbol of life, and water is a symbol of Torah, because Torah is life. But there it was. Jericho was just so green in the midst of the brown. And I suddenly thought of this story, which is also in this parsha, the story of those grapes. I remember hearing about those grapes when I was kindergarten, first grade, second grade, whatever, in Sunday school, about these grapes so big that it took two men to carry them. And maybe you can find grapes like that, but I'd always thought, what is this? It's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it? But then I realized they could just have been talking about what we call table grapes. I mean, which we take so much for granted. Maybe it was an exaggeration. Maybe it wasn't, but it doesn't matter. What it meant is that Jericho is so green. It's like an emerald set against everything else. And that taught me something about how we view this book, how we view the Torah book. I suppose you could say how we view other books, but how we view this Torah book. We look at the details. We might question the details. Is it an exaggeration that the grapes were so big? Is it an exaggeration that the sea split in just this way? Not in the way the people felt about it, not in what it meant, not in the way they experienced it. Maybe the people were able to find a way to ford across a sea, a marshy sea, and then the Egyptians' chariots just got so stuck they couldn't proceed. And maybe that's actually what happened, but for them it was as if, my gosh, the sea had swallowed them up. The sea had opened up so we could go through and then swallowed them up. Maybe they did find a cluster of grapes that was so big that it took two people to carry it. Could be. Or maybe it's just what it was like seeing how green Jericho was after only ever having seen such brown. But the book is communicating something to us more than in historical details. It's communicating in emotional experience. And really, when we read the Torah, it's and maybe this is why chanting the Torah is better than simply reading it, because we're really meant to engage in the passion, in the feeling, in the emotion that is embedded, in the excitement and the fear and the drama and the awe that is embedded in the text. And one way we try to remember that also is by climbing into the text in what we do. And that leads me to the third section of our reading today that I want to talk about, and the last one, which is the end of the Parsha. The end of the Parsha, Shlach Lecha, beginning Numbers chapter 15, the end of Numbers chapter 15. It's a familiar passage. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lehem tzitzit al kanfei bigdehem l'doratam. The Lord said to Moses as follows: Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves tzitzit, fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the tzitzit, to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your tzitzit. Look at it and recall all the commandments of the Lord and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, Adonai, am your God. This is Parshat Tzitzit, the Parsha about the fringes, the Parsha which from which the practice of the talis, the talit gadol, and the talit katan, which the large talis, which is worn over our clothes, and the small talit, which is worn as an undergarment during the day, traditionally. The tzitzit are ways, something that we do to remember all of this. It's been compared to tying a string around your finger so that you remember, so you don't forget. And it's also been compared to perhaps having a particular pattern of knots was meant so that you could was used so that you could stamp your fringes into some clay as a signature. Could have been any amount of that, but it is meant as a reminder. And I've been wondering lately, here at Temple Beth Shalom, we don't often have services during the day or in the morning. Traditionally, the small talis is worn during the day, not at night. Traditionally, tzitzit aren't required to be worn at night because you're supposed to look upon them, and in the dark, it wasn't really possible to be seeing them so clearly. The large talis is used when you at a shacharit morning service. We only have evening services, and so most of the time it's only the prayer leader who is wearing the talis and who is remembering this mitzvah of tzitzit. So I am wondering if maybe we should begin a practice in our small synagogue of everybody wearing a talis, or all the adults, or post bat mitzvah wearing a talis on Friday nights whenever we have a service. Just have everyone wear a talis in honor of this mitzvah of tzitzit, so that we can remember that mitzvah, which is the mitzvah of remembering all the other mitzvahs. So that we all can be participating in that. Something to think about. Maybe you'll talk about it tonight while you're noshing. But I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And let's discuss in the future about bringing the mitzvah of tzitzit back into our lives. Some of us own our own talisim, which we don't use very often. So this would be an opportunity to engage in it. Shabbat Shalom.